My son picked the tie himself. It was the navy one, with the tiny white anchors on it, the one his grandfather had given him last Christmas. Still in the little gift box it came in, because Theo had decided it was too special to just hang in the closet. He was 7 years old, and he had been planning what to wear to my sister's engagement party for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. He'd written it on the calendar on his bedroom wall in green marker Aunt Callie's party, and every morning when he walked past it he'd say something like, "Mom, do you think they'll have a cake?" Or, "Mom, will I get to give a speech?" The speech thing had started because my sister had called him in February, the week after she and her fiancé got engaged, and told him she wanted him to be the one to do the welcome toast at the party. She'd said it in that voice she uses when she wants to make someone feel like they're the most important person alive. Low, warm, a little breathless. And Theo had stood in the kitchen with the phone pressed against both ears like he needed both sides of his head to take it in. "She said I'm the best speaker she knows," he told me after. He was 7. I didn't have the heart to tell him that was probably not statistically accurate. We started practicing in March. He wrote the toast on a piece of notebook paper in his second-grade handwriting. Big round letters, and he read it to me every few nights before bed. It was about how Aunt Callie always let him have the window seat on road trips, and how he hoped she and Uncle Patrick would be as happy as people are in dog food commercials, which he clarified meant really happy and outside a lot. I had it memorized by mid-April. My husband had it memorized by mid-April. My husband had it memorized. My father had called twice to ask if he could hear it over the phone. The party was the first Saturday in May. We drove 2 hours to get there. Theo fell asleep in the back seat somewhere outside of Harrisburg and woke up with one cheek creased and his hair pressed flat on one side, and his first words were, "Did I miss the party?" When I said no, he straightened his anchor tie in the rearview mirror with a seriousness I found genuinely difficult not to cry about. My mother had rented out a private room at this event venue outside the city. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, the kind of place where the menu describes everything as artisanal. About 40 people. Family from both sides. My sister's future in-laws, a few friends from her grad program. It was a nice crowd mostly, the kind of gathering where everyone's a little dressed up and a little louder than usual, and someone always ends up doing an impression of someone else's husband by the end. We walked in, and Theo immediately found my father near the bar, and they did their handshake, the complicated one with 3 fist bumps and a finger snap that they'd invented when Theo was 4 and still maintained with complete sincerity. My father crouched down and fixed the collar on Theo's shirt and said, "You ready, buddy?" And Theo said, "I've been ready since February." My father laughed. He looked at me over Theo's head with an expression that meant this kid. I was talking to my aunt near the cheese display. She'd driven down from Connecticut, and I hadn't seen her in over a year, when my mother appeared at my elbow. Not in the way that people appear when they want to join a conversation. In the way that people appear when they need to pull you out of one. "Can I talk to you for a second?" she said. Her voice had that particular flatness it gets when she's already made a decision about something and is now in the process of delivering it. I excused myself and followed her to the hallway outside the room, near the coat closet. A catering person walked past us with a tray of water glasses, and my mother waited until he was gone. "So," she said, "you know Callie and Patrick have been trying to make sure both families feel equally included tonight." I didn't know where this was going, but I felt, already, the particular drop in my stomach that means it's going somewhere bad. Patrick's little cousin is here. Sienna, she's 9, she came down from Boston with her parents, and apparently she was really hoping to be part of the program tonight. And Patrick's mom mentioned it to Callie, and... My mother stopped, adjusted the clasp on her bracelet. Callie thought it would be nice if Sienna did the welcome toast instead. I stood there. I said, "What? It's not a big deal. It's just a toast. Theo can still. He's been practicing since February," I said. "Mom, you know that. You've heard him practice. Sienna is Patrick's family. This is an engagement party for both of them, and Patrick's mother said it would mean a lot. Theo has had this for 3 months," I said. "He wrote a speech. He has it memorized. He told everyone he was doing it." My mother's face did the thing it does when she's decided that your feelings are an inconvenience rather than a data point. A small tightening. A slight upward angle to her chin. "Callie is the bride," she said. It's her party and it's her call. Then Callie should have thought about that before she called my 7-year-old and told him he was the best speaker she knew. My mother looked at me with this expression. Patient, slightly pained. Like she was a teacher dealing with a student who kept missing the point. I just need you to handle this gracefully, she said. Don't make a scene. Explain it to Theo in a way that he understands. He's a child. He'll get over it. And then she walked back into the party. I stood in that hallway for a moment. The coat closet was slightly open and I could see the edge of someone's puffy jacket inside. There was music coming from the room, something with a lot of acoustic guitar. I pressed my hand flat against the wall and breathed through my nose. The part that got me, the thing that I kept circling back to, was not just that they'd changed it. It was the way it was delivered. My mother in a hallway 40 seconds, like she was telling me the parking lot validated was only for 2 hours. No phone call ahead of time. No, we're so sorry. We know Theo was excited. Just, here is the new plan. Be gracious, do not make a scene. He'll get over it. Like Theo's 3 months of careful preparation were a minor inconvenience to be managed rather than something that mattered to a real person. He was 7 years old. He had written the toast in his second-grade handwriting. He thought Aunt Callie had chosen him because he was the best speaker she knew. I went back into the room. Theo was at the table with my father, eating a piece of bread and telling him about a video game he'd been playing where you build underwater cities. He had his speech folded in the inside pocket of his blazer. I knew because he put it there himself before we left the house and showed me, very seriously, the correct pocket. That's where important documents go, he'd told me. I sat down next to him and thought about how to say it. My husband, Will, came over from the drink station with a glass of club soda for me and read my face immediately. We've been together for 9 years. He knows every version of my face. He set the club soda down and said, quietly, "What happened?" I told him low enough that Theo wouldn't hear. Will went very still in the way he goes still when he's angry and choosing how to process it. He looked at Theo, who had now moved on from the Underwater City video game to explaining to my father which of his classmates he would want to have in a real underwater city. He looked back at me. "You're serious," Will said. "Patrick's 9-year-old cousin from Boston." Will's jaw moved. He looked away. "Did Callie at least?" "I haven't talked to Callie." "Someone should talk to Callie." "My mother told me to handle it gracefully." Will let out a breath through his nose that communicated a full paragraph. "Here is the thing about my sister. I love her. I want to be clear about that because the rest of what I'm going to say might not make it obvious. I love her and I know she's not a cruel person. I know that she was under a lot of pressure with her future in-laws and that Patrick's mother has strong opinions and that Callie is, at her core, someone who wants everyone around her to be comfortable even when making everyone comfortable is structurally impossible. I know all of that. And I also know that she called my son on a Tuesday night in February and told him he was her first choice, and she let him practice for 3 months. And she did not call me at any point before this party to say I'm so sorry. Something has changed. She sent my mother to do it in a hallway, 40 seconds, no warning. I watched her across the room, laughing at something Patrick's sister was saying, her hand on Patrick's arm. She looked genuinely happy. She looked like a person who had not, minutes ago, caused a situation that I was now going to have to translate for a 7-year-old. My father touched my arm. He had moved his chair slightly toward mine while I was watching my sister, and now he was just there, the way he's been there my entire life, not making a show of it, just present. He said quietly, "What did your mother say to you in the hallway?" I told him. He listened with his hands flat on the table and his eyes on me, and he didn't say anything for a moment. Then he looked at Theo, who had graduated from the underwater city to practicing the handshake again with my younger cousin, the 3 fist bumps and the finger snap, both of them very serious about the finger snap. "Does he know yet?" my father said. "No," my father said slowly. "Then, don't tell him yet. Give me a few minutes." He got up. I watched him cross the room to where my sister was standing. He didn't rush. He didn't make a scene. He just walked over to her with the steady, unhurried walk he has, the one that means he's decided something. I saw him touch her elbow, saw her turn toward him, saw her smile dim just slightly as he said something I couldn't hear. Patrick's hand dropped from the small of her back. Patrick turned to lip too. I don't know exactly what my father said in those first few minutes. I've asked him since and he said, I just asked her to tell me, in her own words, what she thought was going to happen when Theo found out. He said she started explaining about Sienna and about Patrick's mother and about wanting both families to feel included. He said he listened to all of it. And then he told me later, he said, I hear all of that, and I'm asking you to think about what you're asking your sister to go do right now. She's going to walk over to her 7-year-old son who has a speech folded in his jacket pocket and tell him that you changed your mind. I need you to think about whether that's a decision you want to make. My sister, according to my father, didn't say anything for a moment. Then my father came back to the table. He sat down. He looked at me. He said, Go get a drink. Take your time. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I got up and walked to the drink station and stood there with my back to the room, pouring myself some water I didn't need. Behind me, I heard my sister's voice. She'd walked over to Theo. I didn't turn around right away. I listened. I heard her say his name, heard her crouch down. I knew from the shift in the ambient sound, the small adjustment in the acoustic of the room. And then I heard her say, Hey, I wanted to make sure I found you before things get started. Theo said, I have my speech. It's in my pocket. My sister said, I know. Can I tell you something first? There was a pause. I almost made a mistake tonight, she said. I almost let someone talk me into changing something I had already decided, and that wasn't fair to you. You were doing the welcome toast. That's yours. I chose you because I meant it, and I'm not changing it, Theo said. Oh. Then what was the mistake? She said. I'll explain when you're older. Theo considered this and apparently found it acceptable because the next thing I heard was him saying, Can I practice my speech one more time? Just to make sure. I turned around. My sister was kneeling in front of him with her party dress touching the floor, listening, while Theo pulled the folded notebook paper from the inside pocket of his blazer, the important documents pocket, and began to read, in his slow and careful second-grade voice, about how she always gave him the window seat and how he hoped she and Patrick would be as happy as people in dog food commercials. Her face while she listened was something I will not be able to describe accurately. It was the face of someone receiving something they almost didn't. My mother came to stand next to me. I felt her before I saw her. She watched Theo practicing his toast for a moment, and then she said quietly, Your father spoke to Callie. I gathered. A pause. He didn't have to make it a whole thing. I looked at her. Theo has been practicing that speech since February. He wrote it himself. He told Dad about it on the phone. He picked his outfit 3 weeks ago. I stopped. It was already a whole thing, Mom. It just wasn't a whole thing for you until someone made it one. She didn't respond. I didn't say anything else. Across the room, Theo finished his practice run and looked up at my sister and said, How was that? She said, Perfect. You're ready. He folded the paper very carefully and put it back in the important documents pocket. Then he straightened his anchor tie, both hands, the same way he'd done it in the rearview mirror, and said, Okay, I'm ready when you are. When the party host called everyone's attention and introduced the welcome toast, my son walked to the front of the room with the particular solemnity of a child who understands that something real is happening. He unfolded his notebook paper. He looked up once at the room, at 40 faces looking back at him, and he found mine. I gave him a nod. He read his speech. He read about the window seat. He read about the dog food commercial happiness. He added a line at the end that wasn't in the version I had memorized. I don't know when he wrote it, that said, I'm glad you found somebody to be a family with, because you're already part of ours. He folded the paper and put it back in his pocket. The room clapped, and someone near the back said aw in the way people do when something has genuinely gotten to them, and Patrick's mother, who I had not spoken to all night, laughed and shook her head slowly like she was surprised. Theo walked back to his seat, and Will leaned down and said something to him I couldn't hear, and Theo nodded seriously like he was receiving a debrief. My father was sitting 2 chairs down. He caught my eye and didn't say anything. He just lifted his glass slightly, the way he does. Later, after the dinner and the cake and the long goodbye loop where you think you're leaving, but then you're not leaving for 45 more minutes, I found my sister in the coat room getting her jacket. It was just the two of us. I said, "You didn't have to do that." She said, "Yeah, I did. You had a lot of pressure on you tonight with Patrick's family." She looked at me. "I know. But I called him in February and told him he was my first choice. That meant something." A pause. "It should have meant something to me too before tonight. I'm sorry it took Dad." I didn't say anything for a moment. "Patrick's mom was upset," I said. My sister smiled slightly. She was, for about 10 minutes. Then she watched Theo do the toast, and she came up to me after and said he was wonderful and asked if he'd been doing public speaking classes. I laughed. "First time all night. He learned from a dog food commercial," I said. We hugged in the coat room. It wasn't a fixed thing. Not fully. Not yet. There were still the questions I hadn't asked out loud. Still the fact of that hallway and my mother's voice, and he'll get over it. Those things don't dissolve in one hug in a coat room. But it was a start. Or a continuation. Something that meant we were still trying. Theo fell asleep in the backseat on the way home, same as the drive there, one cheek against the window. His blazer was folded on the seat next to him and the anchor tie was loosened but still on. The folded notebook paper was still in the pocket. Will drove. I sat in the passenger seat with my feet up on the dash, watching the highway lights. He said, "You okay?" I said, "Ask me again in a few days." He nodded. We drove the rest of the way home with the radio low. I thought about my father crossing the room with that unhurried walk. I thought about my sister kneeling in her party dress. I thought about Theo saying, "I'm glad you found somebody to be a family with." I thought about how close it had come to going the other way, how close I had come to walking over to my son and taking that speech out of his pocket myself, gently, as if gentleness would make it hurt less. He still talks about it, actually. Not the almost didn't. He doesn't know about that part, but the toast. He brings it up sometimes. In that casual way, kids return to things that matter to them. Last week he told his teacher that his aunt was getting married, and he said, "I did the speech at her party. It went well." Just like that, it went well. I keep the notebook paper. He doesn't know that either. I found it in his blazer pocket when I was putting the blazer away the week after the party, still folded. I didn't put it back. I put it in the small cedar box on my dresser, where I keep things I don't want to lose. His first lost tooth, a photo strip from our first vacation, a note he left on my pillow when he was 5 that said, "Mom are the best, and also can we get a dog?" I don't know if the family rift with my mother is something that fully heals. She hasn't apologized. I haven't brought it up again. We've talked 3 times since the party, and it's been fine in the way that fine sometimes is. Functional, surface level, neither of us reaching for the thing underneath. Maybe someday. Maybe not. Patrick's mother sent me a text the week after the party. It said, "Your son was the highlight of the evening. You must be so proud." I texted back, "I really am." I didn't say the rest of what I was thinking. I didn't say. I almost had to tell him no. I didn't say. A 7-year-old had a speech folded in his jacket pocket and believed he had been chosen because he was the best speaker someone he loved had ever known. And for one very long evening, I was not sure that belief was going to survive the night. But it did. He walked to the front of that room with 40 people watching. And he unfolded his notebook paper, and he told my sister he hoped she'd be dog food commercial happy, and he meant every word. And the room laughed and someone in the back said, "Aw," and Patrick's mother shook her head slowly. The tie with the anchors on it is back in the box now, too. The special occasion box. The one that lives on the highest shelf because it's not for every day. He asked me last week when the next special occasion was. I told him I'd let him know. He said, "Tell me with enough time to practice." I've thought about that hallway a lot since that night. The coat closet slightly open, the catering guy walking past with the water glasses, my mother's voice going flat the way it does when a decision has already been made and she's just delivering the paperwork. What strikes me now, more than the anger, more than the hurt, is how ordinary the moment looked from the outside. 2 women standing in a hallway at a party. Could have been anything. Could have been a conversation about parking or about whether the salad had pine nuts. But what it actually was someone telling me that 3 months of my son's careful preparation didn't matter enough to warrant a phone call. That a 7-year-old's belief that he had been chosen, Genuinely, specifically because someone loved him and meant it, was a scheduling detail that could be quietly revised without consequence. I don't think my mother is a bad person. I don't even think my sister made that choice lightly. What I think is that it's very easy, when you're managing a lot of competing pressures, to treat the people closest to you as the ones most likely to absorb the cost. Because they will. Because they love you. Because they'll be gracious, like you asked. And they'll handle it like you said. And the child will get over it like you promised. The people on the outside, the in-laws, the new family, the ones you're trying to impress, those are the ones who feel like stakes. The ones already in your corner feel like a given. That math is wrong. I know that now more clearly than I ever have. My father understood something that night that took me longer to articulate. He didn't make a speech about it. He didn't argue. He just walked across the room with that unhurried walk and asked my sister a simple question. What did she think was going to happen? Not as an accusation, as an invitation to think it through, to actually sit with the image of her nephew walking over to his mother, pulling the folded notebook paper out of the important document's pocket and being told no. That's what clarity looks like, I think. Not loudness, not a scene, just the willingness to make someone face the real shape of what they're about to do before they do it. Theo doesn't know how close it came. He knows the toast. He knows it went well. He knows his grandfather was there and proud. That's the version of the story he carries, and I'm glad. Children should get to carry the clean version for as long as possible. The complicated version, the hallway, the 40 seconds, the he'll get over it. That one is mine to hold. What I want Theo to understand someday, when he's old enough for it, is not that the world is full of people who will disappoint him. He'll figure that out on his own. What I want him to understand is that how you respond when someone tries to take something that was genuinely yours, something you earned, something you prepared for, something that was promised, that response is a choice. You can fold. You can make a scene. Or you can do what he did without even knowing he was doing it. You can put the paper back in your pocket, straighten your tie, and say, okay, I'm ready when you are. He walked to the front of that room and he read every word. He was ready because he had done the work. And no amount of last-minute hallway conversations could take that away from him, because preparation doesn't live in the permission someone gives you. It lives in you. He'd been building that speech for 3 months. That was already his, regardless of what anyone decided in a coat closet on a Saturday in May. I think about that when things feel precarious. I think about a 7-year-old in an anchor tie who had done the work and knew it. That kind of readiness is its own answer.